England have an incredible knack of doing something which looks like it should be a positive and looks like it should be good, which is finishing top of the group, one of the best defensive records in the entire competition, not losing a game, and still have it be negative. Like, I feel like that's impressive, and I feel like I've kind of dressed that up to paint it in a more positive light than maybe it actually is. But that still remains the fact. We're top of the group, defensively, relatively untroubled. We conceded one goal through an absolute pile driver of a shot from 30 yards, and comfortably, relatively, through to the next round. So, is there cause for concern with England? Yes and no, I will say. I'm going to be fair and I'm going to be balanced about this. I've purposefully given myself about 24 hours to calm down and rationalise my thoughts about this game and where England are now and where they could be going forward. But before we get into this video, I never really do this, but I've been told that it's something I should do. If you like this video, please leave a like. If you dislike it, please dislike it. I'd love to just encourage interaction from you guys, not just licking my arse and telling me how great a video. Also, I just want to hear your thoughts. I want to hear pushback. I want to hear, your own take on the game. And if you like the video enough that you want to see more, I'd love you to subscribe. And if not, that's sound. Have a good day. Just wanted to do a bit of admin. But right now, we're going to get on to England's performance against Slovenia. So it is worth pointing out that while England came to try and win the game, and they were getting on the ball and fairly dominant in that sense, Slovenia came to do one thing: get a point. So I'm going to take that into context with everything I'm saying. They sat deep, they sat on their 4-4-2, and they defended really well. They defended as a unit, but they weren't really interested in attacking. Their whole game plan was to get a point and get to the knockout phases, which for Slovenia is huge. That is a massive accomplishment, and fair play to them. I'm not going to criticise their approach. They did what they had to do to get the best result for them, And it's weird because I could have sworn Slovenia didn't have a massive population, definitely under about 8 million. So, it was almost impossible for them to do well at a tournament. Who'd have thought? Cheers, Graham. And England did try and change formation a bit to break them down. So there was a complete split in the back five and the front five. Gahey and Stones as the centre-backs, Walker and Trippier more orthodox full-backs, Rice as the holding midfielder. He didn't have the partnering Trent Alexander-Arnold with him. He was replaced by Conor Gallagher. Bukayo Saka on the right, Phil Foden on the left, Jude Bellingham in the 10, playing more on the left side, and Harry Kane up top. And England would try and play through a number of ways, and they couldn't really play through Rice because he was generally marked by one person while the other one was going to press the ball. Spora, if it was on the right hand side and it went to Gahey, he'd go up to press. If the ball then went to John Stones, you'd see Sesko come out to him with Spora dropping back in on Declan Rice, and they'd recycle that. The issue is Declan Rice does not make cleverly smart movements around his markers to receive the ball. That is just a fact. He's been criticised this tournament, and sometimes it goes a bit too far. But also throughout the season, I've always thought Declan Rice was overrated. I think the way people described him, even putting him on Rodri's level, was mental. And now I just think people are sort of opening their eyes up to where Declan Rice's limitations lie. And they just realise he's not elite. He's a very, very good player. He's not elite. And you see it when he gets the opportunity to turn on the ball and play through, which happened a couple of times, with passing angles and players looking for the ball to feet in front of him. There is something about this guy that just isn't progressive. He'll resort to taking it back, taking it the easy route, and recycle it back amongst the full-back and centre-backs. He's just not a progressive player. Good player, technically, it's where he lacks. So he was not a source that they could build up through the middle from. Where they would typically try and build up in that first half is by getting the ball to Trippier and Phil Foden dropping in a little bit deeper to receive the ball in this area, and Jude Bellingham making a direct run in behind, trying to drag in that defensive line back. And this is actually one of England's biggest issues, and one of the things that have frustrated me so much throughout the game. There is no chemistry between Jude Bellingham and Phil Foden. There is none. 3 games we've seen them together now, they're not playing on the same wavelength, they're not making moves that benefit the other, they're not making off-the-ball runs that give the other the luxury to play their game. They are too different to work. I firmly believe that. Talk about playing Jude Bellingham in the 8. No, I think you have to pick one for the rest of this tournament as the number 10 and go with them. And a lot of the time, Jude Bellingham was trying to look for that direct run in behind, dragging the defensive line back. The issue is nobody would make any movement into any space this created. They're silly runs in the sense that he's never going to receive the ball in these areas. Like, it would have to be a special passer to hit that, and that would have to be a special passer on their good day to hit some of the runs he was making. But so many times he'd make that movement, nobody would be showing for it. Rice wouldn't come short for it. Trippier wouldn't make a movement into the space to look for the ball. Kane wouldn't drop in to look for it. And as a result, attacks broke down so easily. Phil Foden was forced into the backwards ball where the shape then reset, Slovenia could reset, and England go again. And the movement of the ball between the defenders was so slow. Nothing quick about it. They weren't necessarily drawing a press onto him because Slovenia had no interest in pressing. There was no great movement on the ball. Sometimes you'd get Foden looking for the ball in this deeper area that would then push Trippier onto the left wing position. There'd be those sort of changes and rotations within positions, but nothing that really troubled Slovenia. It was all very, very slow, very laboured, very predictable. And Slovenia didn't mind England having the ball in this position no matter who it was, because without Trent Alexander-Arnold, with Harry Kane staying up the pitch, there was no one that could really hurt Slovenia with the passing. And sometimes you would get Kane pushing up into this position as well to receive it, but with how deep Slovenia were, there was just nothing on. There was nothing on, and it just felt like more of a frustration of them trying to get into the game to really try and open things up for England. And you would see sort of direct movements from the wide tens in terms of trying to get in behind in just general play if the centre-backs had it, or Trippier. But again, nothing that could really be found with a pass, from deep with Gahey or Stones or whoever, because of the deep nature of Slovenia, and you get Kane dropping in a bit to maybe accommodate that type of movement and create space in the middle that he could receive the ball. And I have to say, why was Conor Gallagher brought in? Can anyone answer me that question? I know people will say his energy, and did it make us a little bit better in the press? Yes and no. I think we just went to the level we were at in the first 30 minutes against Serbia. But, we showed that we could do that without Conor Gallagher, so I don't know why he was essential for that. He's a good off-the-ball runner, and he will run from deep in the way that Trent won't, and he's very selfless in that regard, so I'll give him that. So, making those darting runs in behind that was never going to be found with any ball is clearly an instruction with the patterns that you can see developing. I don't get it, personally. But in terms of technical quality to play in these tighter areas against a Slovenia team that are going to go two banks of four and protect their point with their lives, he was not essential. Nowhere near essential. Why he thought Gallagher was the change to make in this game, I do not know. It didn't work, didn't contribute to anything in attack, and England, as a result, never attacked down that right-hand side in the first half. It was all down the left, focusing on trying to get Foden and Bellingham on the ball. And Conor Gallagher was a spare part. He was an absolute spare part. Didn't contribute anything in the deeper sense because he's not got that passing ability. Mind boggles. And to be fair to Southgate, he did make a change in that second half. Conor Gallagher off, Mainu on, and the change in England's style was dramatic. So where I was speaking about earlier, where they had players that were hiding away from space, where space would be created and nobody was making the most of it, everyone just almost seemed a bit too shy, a bit too on the fringes of the game to go and occupy it. They didn't have that in Mainu. Mainu found space excellently. A centre midfielder coming out of position, he'd find his way into that space and look to take it on the half turn and play it through to Bellingham or Kane. He'd search for it as well. He almost lacked a bit of discipline in terms of positionally, and he would operate around that forward line, and as a result, it pushed Jude Bellingham out left, I think, to get Phil Foden in these centre positions, who again is a lot more fluid with his positions. And some of the areas that Foden and Mainu were looking to get on the ball and trying to play through was huge and very beneficial. And it's weird because Bellingham isn't a player that ever lacks confidence, but he seemed nervous to get on the ball at points in this game. Like, he seemed to be playing so on the fringes that it just didn't seem like him. As I say, he demands the ball, he drives with it from deep, he's powerful, he bursts into areas, and it just seemed like he didn't want it. And having Mainu that could find these pockets as space was opened up, especially on that right hand side, and play through and link up with the likes of Saka and Walker, making the runs into the half space as well when the ball went out wide to Saka, was huge. Dropping in and helping Rice progress the pass, giving Rice a bit more of an option as well that was a lot more blatant to progress the play and actually help Rice pass forward. Another change that was made that was benefited because England started building up down this side was Mainu taking positions up in these deeper areas, which he would tend to do to get on the ball, which meant that Bukayo Saka could move into the half space and Kyle Walker could overlap here, and it gave these two a bit more freedom to play their natural game on this side, and it did cause some openings, not enough to create a chance that was going to lead to a goal, but something encouraging. And they also took Saka off and brought Palmer on, which was a very good move, and Palmer operating in this half space was a lot more comfortable for him. And where I was talking about before, where there was no chemistry between Foden and Bellingham, it felt like there was in this area. So let's just say if Palmer receives the ball out wide, which would be his starting position, then you'd see the movements clear from Mainu, who would make his run into the half space, and Kyle Walker, who would make the overlapping run. And it just felt like there was more of an understanding of the positions that they were playing in and the runs that needed to be made when a player made a certain movement. There was obvious triggers. There was clear identity in the passing between these three. And it made the team a lot more fluid second half. It was too little too late, and England still couldn't break Slovenia down, but much better, and it showed something that can be worked with. I don't think Saka's done anything wrong to be dropped, by the way. I think that would be an incredibly harsh move if that was to happen, but who would you want more operating in that half space? If we're going to push Kyle Walker into more of an overlapping role, you'd probably want Cole Palmer. He can create from this position. It gets Mainu moving in these channels that could drag a marker away to leave Kane a little bit more isolated, and obviously Kane's finishing ability once he gets that opportunity is huge. Maybe gives more of a platform for Foden to operate in a free role, so it's something that England have to consider going forward. But we've covered that. We're going to go over the defensive phase from the game now. Because England's front five would try and press that Slovenia build-up, who would build up in a 2-4. There was a level of high press. It wasn't as closed off as the Denmark game was, and they would try and get on the ball in these areas. But again, like there was a split in the defence and the midfield of the attacking phase, there was a split in the defence and the midfield in the defensive phase. As that front five would press and the back five would drop off. And the back four would drop off a lot deeper than you would expect. They're not aerially dominant players, so that role fell to Declan Rice. Oops, I just moved the goalkeeper. To win these aerial situations, the defence would drop off, they'd stick narrow, and they'd prevent themselves from being opened up, which is going to contribute to the amazing defensive record when you've got that back four so ready to defend eagerly. Rice had to win these aerial duels, and he did for the most part. He lost the odd one, but nature of probability, really. When that first press is broken for England is when they really do drop into shape, and it does get deeper. It does get a lot more negative in these areas. So when England defend, they defend in a very deep 4-4-2, and it really does take the work of everyone in these shapes. So when they look for the runs of maybe the half space play, you'll get Declan Rice following suit. If the overlapping run of the fullback comes in, Phil Foden comes into this area, and it really does go man for man in these areas. And the issue is because of how deep England can find themselves in, it leaves this space so free for a player to run into and receive the ball. And so they could leave themselves very exposed on the edge of the box. Slovenia didn't have anyone that were going to hurt England, but why give yourself that chance of giving this space away at the edge of the box? It just takes one player losing concentration, losing a marker, for the ball to be slipped into a Sesko, and England concede a goal. And then who knows where they end up in the ranking of the group. They end up on the difficult side of the tournament. But alas, England have a very, very winnable route to the final. Not to disrespect the other countries involved, but that is just the state of play we're dealing with here. And so they now have a chance. They need to fix up some problems, but the substitutions have showed that there is a way this system can work with players beneficial. But the good things about Southgate in previous tournaments was his ability to make very unpopular decisions, but those that benefited the complexion of the team and what the team needed. Now it feels like he's trying to be the popular guy. He's trying to fit everyone in, and it's not working, and it's leading to a lack of balance, which is, as I just said, is what he's been so good at in previous tournaments. Anytime he made a big decision like that, it felt like he was proven right. Now he's starting to lose the touch, and whether it's because the nature of player he's dealing with now just feels like of a higher profile, and maybe it's past the point of a player he can manage personally, who knows. And maybe this is just the sign that the Southgate era has ended at England. But I'm not going to lose my hope. I'm going to try and go into the knockouts a bit optimistic and just hope for something a little less boring. But I'd love to know what you guys think. As I said, like, dislike, subscribe, comment, whatever. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Cheers, lads. in a bit.